Welcome to another edition of Civically Speaking. I'm Alicia Crank, Executive Director at Seattle City Club, and I am joined by Casey Davis, the CEO over at the Edmonds Food Bank. Hi, Casey. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you, Alicia, for having me on today.
Well, I've been excited for this conversation for a while because one, I live in Edmond, so I'm very familiar with you and the work that you're doing. But I'm also really excited about what's coming up. But before we go into that, why don't you tell us more about the food bank, when it was founded, what work you're doing, and kind of what's coming on the platform?
Thank you. We are I like to say, a 40-year-old organization that has actually been a nonprofit for 5 years. So we were founded in 1981 and we became an independent nonprofit in 2019. So we're about to celebrate 5 years actually on the 19th of this month.
Congratulations.
And we thank you. And when I started, we were serving about 200 households a week, and we just had one distribution located on site. And now we serve, sadly, in some ways, over 1,000 households. But that's due in part to our outreach and to getting out into the community and engaging with a huge number of partners to ensure that everyone not only has access to food, but they feel like they can access it, come and access it in a safe, comfortable place that is welcoming.
You know, when you were at Edmonds International Women's Day earlier this year, so the theme for people who were not there for it, it was, rule breakers and good troublemakers. And I remember we were sitting there and I was asking, like, what rules do you break? And at first you're like, I don't know what those might be. But then one thing you said has really resonated with me since then. And you said that when people come to get services from you, and there's certain rules and regulations around who can be served or whatever. You're like, if someone comes and is needing food, you're going to feed them. And that just has
Yes.
stuck with me. Because sometimes I think that when we talk about, especially from a civic engagement standpoint, is, oh, we should, do things a certain way. And, but sometimes those rules actually end up not serving those who need it the most.
Yeah. And don't you think we learned that so significantly during COVID? We just experienced all of these breaks in how things worked. And what happened in some cases, for example, before COVID, we had to check everybody's zip code. And even if they lived just across the line into, say, Linwood from us, and we were by far the closest food bank, just a mile or two away, they had to drive 4 or 5 miles to go to a certain food bank because that covered their zip code. And one of the things that happened in the food insecurity at the federal and state level was they said, that doesn't make sense. Whoever's open, because not everybody was open. We were open all the way through COVID. And they said, go where you can get food. Come where you can get food. We just want people to have food. And shouldn't that be how we all think about this? I mean, it's not like food should be considered a privilege, but actually, sadly, in this country, nutritious food is a privilege for most people. We can always get to, and there's nothing against a good box of macaroni and cheese. It can be a real comfort food for people. But the reality is, it's not the healthiest thing in the world,
Right.
right? But I can spend 99 cents and get that and fill up a child, or I can get maybe an apple,
Mm-hmm.
maybe, and so that means that food, when it's nutritious, has become a privilege, and that shouldn't be how it works.
Yeah.
That just shouldn't be how it works. And that's what we're trying to address. And I think I've always looked at things. I've had huge privileges in my life. But I was also raised by parents who were born and raised during the Depression. And so that balancing act, they insisted that we understand that not everything just comes to you.
Yeah.
And, but I still had huge privileges, even in that environment. And I think that we should be really aware and recognize that privilege and do what we can to balance that out. And through this job, I'm lucky enough to be able to do that. And I couldn't do it without the amazing staff that we have here and the hundreds of volunteers. And we wouldn't need to do it if we didn't have customers who needed to come here. But, they're working hard. Most of our customers are really hardworking people. But you just can't make ends meet in an area where, what is it? It's 4 or 5. We're either the 4th or 5th highest cost of food and rent.
Yes.
How do you make that work, even with our amazing work that people have done to try and increase minimum wage?
Yeah. Let's talk about privilege for a second, because sometimes I think when it's being used, or when someone sees it or hears it, there's a certain way that they look at it. And when I think about food banks and food insecurity, and I think that there's sometimes a misconception that, especially when you have a food bank in a relatively wealthy area, like in Edmonds, that someone goes, so they're surprised to see that there are people there that actually need food, or that, there are older folks that have been around for a while that are actually the ones that are utilizing these services. How do you talk about that with people?
Well, I think the question that comes up quite often is this one: how do you decide who gets food? And so, to a certain extent, I might ask you, like when somebody asks me about those questions, I turn the question back, and I'm right back to them. I don't know. How would you decide who deserves food? And the answer is normally, well, everybody deserves food, right? And there's your answer. And so the reality is, let's use seniors as an example.
Mm-hmm.
We have many seniors who have worked hard all of their lives, and they counted on their retirement and Social Security and all to get them through. And you hear people say, well, their investments are doing well, and their Social Security, gosh, a couple of years ago, it got raised by 8%. But in that year, food went up by 12%.
Right.
So I think that we have to be honest about our privilege. And people have it in different ways. And I just don't think that concept of privilege should pay into things that are so high on the hierarchy of needs.
Mm-hmm.
People deserve to eat.
Right.
People deserve to have a safe place to get food. People deserve to get food that's culturally familiar to them.
And food security or insecurity thereof shouldn't be partisan.
Absolutely not. No. And it's a big challenge for us right now. I don't know if you know, but the federal government is putting out their plans for the budget for this year. And among them, the Senate is leaving SNAP benefits, which are a huge part of the world of food, addressing food security, right?
Yeah.
People will get some money from SNAP, and then they'll get some food from the food bank, and then they have some money that they're earning in income, and that will allow them to eat nutritionally. But what happens quite often is people fall off of that sort of cliff of being able to access SNAP, and they lose that benefit as they earn more income, but they're not earning enough to actually cover healthy food. So that's often why they continue to come to the food bank.
Yeah.
But one of the things that's going to happen in the budget currently this year is there's the two budgets, and the House budget cuts over the next, I believe it's 5 years, $30 billion out of the SNAP program. And the Senate leaves it just alone. And obviously, it's important for us to recognize in the food insecurity world that it's not just this organization that makes a difference. It's our partnership with Linwood Food Bank, who we serve about 11% of the population of the county of Snohomish out of our food bank, because we're a very populated area. Mm-hmm. And Linwood Food Bank serves about 16%. So you're talking that over 25% of those facing food insecurity, and you look around and you say, well, We don't have the same issues that they might have up around Marysville or in some other areas or out in Darrington. But the reality is, with the cost of housing, most people face some level of food insecurity. I mean, that's why over a quarter of the kids who are in the Edmonds part of Edmonds School District, overall, the whole school district has like a 30-some% free and reduced lunch.
Wow.
I don't know the current number, so I can't give the exact one, but it'll be in the 30s. And then like 25% or more just in the Edmonds part of Edmonds School District. That means a quarter of our population, or 40,000 people in the community, that would equate to 10,000 of those having some level of food insecurity. If you elevate that from what the school is facing to the whole population of the community.
I'm glad that you brought up, you took the conversation from just being about kind of locally what's happening, but how it's impacted on the federal level. And I think a lot of people don't think about how that comes down. You were just in DC, correct?
I was
Can you
at
talk
the
about what
FRAC
that was about?
conference.
Yeah.
Yeah, the FRAC conference is this National Anti-Hunger conference, and the USDA is involved. A lot of major corporations that support addressing food insecurity are involved. And the idea is an opportunity for those working to address food insecurity to learn more about all the programs that are out there, especially at the federal level at that, but and bring our stories and the stories of our customers to a community that can have, as a group, a larger impact. So we spent 2 days in classes, and there were everything from talks and group discussions on all kinds of different things, from the LGBTQIA to S plus population and how they're in fact affected by food insecurity, to what SNAP benefits are coming out, the summer EBT program, which is huge. We're so excited that that is coming out to the community. And, how can we go back and encourage and make sure that, families are getting their kids signed up so that they get that extra funding in the summer when kids aren't getting free lunches. All of those kinds of discussions are happening. And then we went over to the Hill and had meetings with our elected officials or their agriculture representative, which is just as valuable, to talk to them about what we're hoping to see accomplished in the next Congress.
And did you feel like those were really powerful or impactful conversations? Only, and I ask that only because we are in a significant election year um, here in Washington State. So a lot of the reps that I think you probably met with are also, going to be on the ballot.
Right. So the three representatives will all be running for re-election this year, and yet they're still also balancing that with the working hard there. And our two senators were also very receptive to hearing what we had to say. We are lucky in one way. In a lot of Washington, Snohomish County, in particular, those that represent this area, King County as well. I know that some people went to see Jayapol. So that was we kind of split into groups to go to different areas. But we have a lot of support for wanting to do the right thing for members of our community that need some support. And that was a positive interaction. And so being able to share those stories was really great. We also had people who were talking with people who are fully behind those kinds of cuts. And it's challenging to me because I don't know the reality of it completely, right? We're not there yet. But if you don't fund to me, a social justice support system, in this case SNAP, and you put up roadblocks for nonprofits to access federal funding in any way, which can happen.
Mhm.
But the nonprofits are ultimately being the one that are going to try and do the work.
Yeah.
And eventually they're going to be overwhelmed. And then you have a system that doesn't have any support from any sector.
Mhm.
And I think to myself, what does that look like?
It's crazy. Let's talk about you brought up earlier about partnerships and the value thereof. So coming back locally, I know that I think some people are probably thinking, oh, Edmonds Food Bank is in an affluent, it's not in Deadman's anymore, but it's still an affluent place, and they probably have their own space, and you don't. So you have
No.
community partnerships that are helping you to do this work. Can you talk more about where that's being done out of, and kind of what are the great things about it, but what are some of the limitations that you're finding?
Yeah. So we rent space at a not fully market price, but a significant a significant percentage of market price from the church that we used to be a part of.
Yeah.
And we have that space for a limited time. So while we do serve 1,000 households ish a week, we have that space to actually set up the food bank from 6 a.m. on Monday mornings till about 4 on Tuesdays. And then it's sort of shared, but it's also can be said we can't use it with a little bit of notice. So we actually distribute 5 days a week, 4 to 5 days a week every week. So we have to figure out how to kind of fit that in. And most of those are offsite. So we have 2 distributions here. And I saw that you're talking about our Monday and Tuesday, and we have pickup windows. We have an online ordering system for those who can use it. We have a drive up or walk up system and a seating area and all for those who can't. Every order, even through COVID, has before COVID, we had a grocery. I should step back and say that we had a grocery store model. So people came and shopped for themselves. But with the increase in the number of households, but not any increase really in time that we can be open on site, we don't get to do that. But personalized choice is incredibly important in our food system. And so people can order exactly what they want out of what we have online, or they can drive up and fill out a handwritten order of what they want. And we have people, these amazing volunteers who shop for them, and then they can pick up that food. So they also don't have to wait as long. We're not a fan of lines here if we can avoid them. So we try and make it all the choices you would have if you went to the grocery store, Alicia. So whether you get online and do an order and it takes you 10 minutes to come by and pick it up, or we do have some people with special dietary needs that shop in person, and we do delivery.
Yeah.
So if you're a senior and you can't get here because you don't drive anymore, but you really could use the food, we bring the food to you. So all the same choices that we would hope we would have, our customers have. And we do that a lot with partnerships. So we partnership with the Korean Community Services Center because they have people that they work with that trust them. They speak the language, and we partner with them to do distributions. They provide other services, we provide food. We do the same thing with the Latina Educational Training Institute. We do the same thing with the Washington West African Center. And each one of those distributions look different. St. Albans, a huge supporter of ours, and we do a pop-up for them. We also do some work in partnership with the Foundation for Edmonds School District to distribute to some of the local schools. We partner with Edmonds College, and we have either to provide food to or to receive support from in terms of services that address the root causes of food insecurity.
Mhm.
Things like domestic violence, high prices of rent, and being maybe put in a position where you need a lawyer. So the advocates through the legal aid in Snohomish County, all these different groups partner with us. And one of our unique programs is we partner with the community court here in Edmonds, so that if an individual feels that they want food, when they come through the court system and have to show up weekly, bi-weekly, whenever they're showing up for meetings, they can order food and the food will be waiting for them when they go to their appointment.
Wow.
Now, some people are going to say all kinds of things about that. There's a whole spectrum of isn't that wonderful to why.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is when individuals are not mainstream for whatever reason, they speak a different language, they have a different sexual orientation, they faced incarceration for some reason. All of those individuals, especially if they're trying to reintegrate into the community, face challenges.
Mm-hmm. You
There
know,
are
one of
many
the what?
jobs. There are many jobs out there that felons can't have. There are many jobs that people don't want you around if you have, even if you don't have a conviction, but you admit an addiction.
Mm-hmm.
If you look different, if you act different, all of those things. Now, I'm not going to get into that challenge of that, but those people are more likely to face food insecurity. And that's where I step in.
Right.
And so if we can keep people more away from food insecurity, if we can keep more people housed, they are less likely to slip back into habits that might not be good for them and thus not good for the community as a whole.
What I'm hearing across all of this, and even when you first started talking about this, the word I wrote down is what you said, customers. And as such a word of respect, when you're talking about who you're serving. And again, for someone who's worked in for profits and now nonprofit, you know, you can look at, oh, those that you're serving through a nonprofit, they're your client or they're your, you know,
recipient. That's always the
right,
one
a
I hate.
recipient, but not, you know, this is a customer. This is someone that should be treated a certain, you know, a way of respect, whether their income is over here or over there, kind of thing.
Absolutely.
And
And
I really appreciate that.
thank you for noticing that. I think words matter. They matter so much. And we get wrapped up in not using them because we feel some connection to how something is said.
Yeah,
I'll tell you a little story when I started here.
sure.
Amazing volunteers here. But some of the terms for me felt very dated and very much in the I'm here and you're here kind of mode. And so I was talking to the whole volunteer group and I said, whose food bank do you think this is? Like, whose food bank is this? And they have so much passion about the food bank, right? This group of
Mhm.
people, they've only worked with me for a few, that's our food bank. And I'm like, coming from both nonprofit and for profit, right?
Right.
Businesses used to exist to provide something for a customer, right? So my brain's like, no. And that so they thought I was being the person, right? Oh, it's your food bank. I'm like, oh no, 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 no. And very quietly, somebody who still is on our board, a lovely, lovely woman, Debbie, says very quietly, it's the client's food bank. And I said, say that louder, but use the word customer. And everybody like, why? They don't pay anything to come here. And I'm like, well, if you've never been in food insecure, you have no idea what they pay,
Right.
because they pay sometimes with dignity and feeling disrespected and a million other things that can happen. Not here, because you guys are great, basically, is what I said to this group. But words matter. And when you think of them as a customer, you think of this as an individual who needs a service. And guess what? I want us not to have any more customers. I want this country to not have any more food insecure customers. That would be, people always say, you get those questions. Oh, you know, if you could have one thing, what it would be,
Mm-hmm.
it would be that there was no need for this, because we had a system in place that in the situations where people needed face food insecurity for these short terms, we
Mm-hmm.
had a system in place that quickly addressed that.
Yeah.
And that the rest of it didn't exist because our food system provided great, healthy food at a price that somebody who we say is earning minimum wage could afford.
You have
So,
a lot of moving pieces going, and
mhm.
I think you've already given me personally an education on how it all connects together. It's not that food insecurity stands on its own when there's all these other, tangible pieces that come into it, whether it's, housing insecurity, domestic violence, just safety, and maybe just calling it all under public health.
Health is the big thing. They were
Yes.
talking about food as medicine at the conference. I've said that for years
Hmm.
and had no idea other people were saying, but they're talking about being able to give prescriptions for food to individuals so that they can come to the food bank with that to get support. That's one of the things that's on the list of USDA support activities. This whole idea is that if you have people who are getting healthy, nutritious food, everything works better. You have less medical care, right?
Yeah.
I mean, people are still going to get sick for different things, but if their body is healthier, less chance that it's a major illness, right? They think better. I mean, we all know we think better. That commercial for that certain candy bar is so accurate.
Yes, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Right? We think better. We process better. Kids learn better. It's why the meal program started. It's why, what is the exact quote that Hoover said about the Black Panthers? And I don't always get it exactly right, but they were one of the biggest risks.
Yeah.
And the reason they were a risk, people who don't understand the history don't understand what they were doing.
Right.
They were the ones that did the food pantries
Yes.
way early on. They had lunch programs and breakfast programs. So kids in places like at the time Harlem or Watts and other places that I'm not educated enough to know all the spots,
I know what you mean. Yeah.
were getting breakfast before they went to school so that they could learn better, so that they could become fuller members of a society that was holding them back.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
And I always go look at that section. I was just in DC, as I said, and I was in the African American Museum. I love to go to the Smithsonian museums, free museums.
Yes.
Gotta love that, right?
Yes.
Everybody gets to learn something, and they had some new exhibits there that I hadn't seen yet, and I wanted to go see the sports one, which you would love with the
Yes.
things that you. And I wanted to see that, but I always walk through the rest of it. And there's a whole section on, the 50s and 60s and that piece that we don't recognize enough. We give credit. Yes, the first food bank is giving credit to St. Mary's in Arizona, I believe it is, but the reality is there were communities doing this kind of work on our tribal lands, in communities where people were growing community gardens and sharing that produce, right?
Right.
And all of those things that have existed, and it's that breakdown that creates the need for me.
Yeah. There's a whole educational piece I want to go into that we won't, because that's a topic for another time. But I do
Sorry.
but the one thing, no, don't be sorry. I mean, it just kind of goes back into some of the stuff that's happening in the educational system across the country right now about not wanting to teach certain histories.
Right.
Because that's what get lost. That's what get lost in the shuffle when
Mm-hmm.
it's only seen one way. But I digress. I do want to close this out though on the fact that again, you have so many moving pieces. You're doing all this great work, but no permanent location, at least not until hopefully sometime soon. So can you talk a bit more about the capital campaign that you're doing right now?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's truly important to us. We feel that the way we can best serve the community, not just our customers, but the community in a whole, is to create a space where we can operate a food bank during the hours that are most effective for our customers. more into the evenings at times, maybe occasional Saturday or multiple Saturdays, different times of day. And first of all, it gives people more choice. And second of all, it allows us to rotate food through so we don't lose food, because food banks are a great way to keep foods from going bad and ending up going to a landfill somewhere, right? And then it will have a community kitchen as part of it. And Annie's Kitchen, which is a well-known organization here from the Edmonds Lutheran Church, would move into that commercial kitchen for their Wednesday night feed. And they do a community feed. And I love that they call that, because it's not just focused on people. Anybody is welcome to come. It's come be part of community. And it does serve a huge number of people who are in need of a hot meal at that time. But it's a great way to interact in the community and to be involved. And we would be able to use that also for teaching, for having other activities, for having an inexpensive space in the area up there. And you would better describe, that community could use spaces.
Yes.
For interaction. It would be near the current neighborhood office for the city. Mm-hmm. It is near the new Madrona Housing Hope property, which will be there. It's going to be down the street if the city chooses to continue with their plan. I don't know where the status of that is, with some property that's up there to put in some community engagement activities. And they're both needed, because the kinds of work we do partners just like we do with other groups. Just because we exist or we would move doesn't mean Linwood Food Bank doesn't need to exist, right? Mm-hmm. Smaller community oriented spaces with space for all of those partners we talked about. We'd have pocket offices that they could use as they needed. They wouldn't be there all the time, but they could come in and out of those spaces as needed. It would give us opportunities to have nutritionists, to do teaching classes about how to cook. We have a whole generation that lost the ability to cook. They would love to cook, but they don't know how.
Right.
All of those kinds of activities. And then space that the community can also use. Space where, if we're not using the community kitchen for something else, what can we do for the community? What event or activity is going on that might be able to use that, as well as conference rooms that could be maybe conference rooms / classrooms that could be used by that area of the community. The city has already said to us, we don't have a place where we can offer meetings.
Right.
In that
I was just
area.
going to say that. I know, as an Edmonds resident, I know that is one of the things I always hear when there's an community event going on. It's always downtown. It's always in the bowl. And there's no spaces up, on the south end of Edmonds or anywhere else outside of downtown to be able to have a gathering.
Right, exactly. And that would be part of it. And we have an idea of talking. We're very, very just high level conversations a couple of times. But Edmonds College has a culinary program.
Right.
What if we had an internship opportunity? We work with a number of different groups. We were just on the front of the paper for having a group from Northwest Child came in and did an activity with us. Northwest Center has individuals coming in with their coaches to learn new skills. What if they could not be just learning them in the grocery part of the environment, but also in the restaurant part of the environment?
Right.
Providing additional
education. A ton of restaurants here.
Exactly. Yeah. So all of these opportunities, and I hope there's 20 more. I mean, as people listen to this, send us ideas on other things that we could be including. We don't want to do those. That's the difference in our model. We have this idea of a web of services. We would not think to do legal aid. And everybody would logically assume, first of all, I don't have a law degree. Secondly, not my area of expertise, but we want to provide space for that. What I strongly believe in is the opportunity for nonprofits to actually work very tightly together without having to be a one-stop shop for everything. Mm-hmm. I think when you have to go through a funnel to get services, right? When you have to go through this funnel, it gets overloaded, and then you're asking so many questions about stuff somebody might not need, but many people need food. So you come for food, and then we just ask the question. We develop the relationship, and we say, as our customer, is there anything else you need? We've had Boy Scout troops go clean somebody's yard up because they couldn't keep up with it, and they told us that's what they needed. So we talked to one of our volunteers, was also with the Boy Scout troop, so they went and did that work. We've had people who said, I need my landlord, I'm trying to leave and they're trying to keep my deposit, and it's stuff that was never fixed from before I moved in. And we've connected them with legal aid, domestic violence, the need for housing, the need for translation, job hunting, job skills, English as a second language, all of these things. That web, we don't need to do it all, but we can be like the house. The kitchen's where everybody gathers, and then they go off and do their own things.
True.
That's kind of how we want to be.
So when is this slated to open?
So do you have $13 million?
Not yet, but let me see what I can do. But talk about that.
Buy those lottery tickets. We're working very hard on it. We have started working on this. Representative Larson, if you saw any of that in the paper, has put forward as one of his 15 projects, $2 million towards our program. We're working hard in the community, and we hope that anybody that's interested should please get in touch. Thank you for putting up the Capital Campaign connection, but we'd be happy to talk to you. And don't assume you have to have $1 million. We'd love that if you did. But what we really want to do is we want to get out in the community and help people understand what we're trying to achieve, and that we will be an asset to this community. Our neighbors are sad that we're leaving. I'm in the bowl of Edmonds with multi-million-dollar homes. And I was just talking to one of the homeowners the other day that I happen to coach with on Girls on the Run. And, they like us being here. We get asked all the time why we aren't going to be able to build here. But we'll be on bus routes. We'll be near to other services. It'll be a great location to do that. And we can be open the hours we need to. So we started. We hope, Jeremy, my development director, would say, we will break ground at the end of 2025.
Okay.
And we will cut a ribbon at the end of 2027.
Now, I will say this. I have put this out on my personal networks, kind of this wish list item. And that wish list item is, I have to believe that there's some place in Edmonds that's, someone that's in real estate or owns a piece of property that's not being used.
Well, we have that part. We have the property. So Edmonds Lutheran Church has agreed. The rent's a little different there. We're still negotiating between $1 a year and $1 a month. And we can build to suit on the property.
Nice.
So the property is there. So now what we're after, if we can finalize that and get all the city approvals that we'll need, and the city has, the city administration recently has been very supportive, including with our request to Representative Larson. And we've got amazing number of letters of support that we asked for from all over Edmonds and from the city and from support services around the community. So now what we need is the funding.
Right. But it also kind of breaks my heart, though, like in the meantime, the thinking that, because I've been to where you are right now, and that you guys have to break it down each time. And I just think about how much resources goes into just the setting up and breaking down all the time. I just have to believe that there is a space somewhere in the Edmonds city limits where someone can go, hey, it's sitting empty. Why don't we let you guys use it for the next 6 months, year,
5
whatever.
years. Give it to us for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, something.
But
I just have to believe. So if there was this kind of wish list property out there that you could use in the meantime, what specs would you need?
We'd have to move the coolers in, so it'd have to have strong electrical, access for restrooms and stuff, those kinds of things. We bring much of our own equipment with us. We need access off street because we have a lot of customers who come and go. So some parking, and you know what? We could probably make it work in about 10,000 square feet if we for short term.
Yeah,
But our biggest challenge is we have to move the equipment, and that's a significant expense.
right.
So while we would love that, and we would think that was great, if we weren't paying rent, it would even out. Um, but we also can't move multiple times because the freezers and the coolers and all have to all be taken apart and then reinstalled. And over time, that doesn't do all that electrical equipment a lot of good. But if we had that space and somebody said to us, until you have that permanent facility or this date, you could have it, we would certainly want to talk to them about that option.
Well, I'm going to put it out in the ether and hope that something comes back. So if it does, you have to come back and tell us any
We
updates
will.
around this.
Well,
Casey,
and we'll look forward to celebrating with you. I thank you, Alicia. I had so much fun when I got to be part of the Troublemakers squad. And I also appreciate you elevating our information, not just ours, but with the other work that you do with Seattle City Club. So
well,
thank you.
no, thank you, Casey. And for everyone watching or listening, here is the link again to go to their website. If you're listening, it's edmondsfoodbank.org. Casey Davis, CEO, thank you so much. I know I will see you around town soon. And with that, thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. And we will have another Civically Speaking coming up soon. So take care.
Thanks. Bye.